In this video, I'm going to be telling you exactly how I start off a new project as part of my PhD studies. So make sure that you stay tuned for the entire video to learn everything that I do at the beginning of a new project. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Ciara and I talk about all things PhD and productivity related. So if you are interested in that type of content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know when new videos are uploaded. Thanks to everyone who has been leaving me comments saying that you missed the vlog videos and things like that. I did take some time off after Vlogmas to sort of regroup and plan out my content for the next sort of couple months at least. One of which will be this new series where we get to share our research updates with each other. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is telling you a little bit about what I've been up to for the last week in terms of my PhD projects. And that means you can also tell me what you have been up to for the last week. So it's a way for us to sort of keep accountable and also keep track of our work. So this will have a live component. If you are watching live, it means we are using the Premiere function, so you can actually chat in the sort of chat function directly with me during the time that the video goes live. The aim being for that to be around 3 p.m. GMT on Fridays. So if you can show up for that, that is awesome. It means we get to sort of hang out live almost. And if you're watching not live, then you can comment down below your research updates for the week and still keep yourself accountable and keep updating us with your research. So if you like this and you want me to continue this series, do comment that down below and give this video a thumbs up so that I know to keep making these videos. If there's any change to this schedule, I will keep you updated in the community tab. So just make sure that you are subscribed so that you'll get those community things coming up in your YouTube home feed. So if you are here with me live, I would love if you would say hi to me in the chat and if you would tell me what has been going on with you. And now it's time for me to tell you exactly what I've been doing. So it's the start of a new year, right before Christmas. We just finished up a really big part of my PhD, which was doing my stage 2 transfer. I have a whole video on that. If you want to check that out, I will have it linked, just because I don't want to go into huge detail, but essentially that was closing up a big chapter of the first part of my PhD. And now we're moving on to the more focused work where I do have a clear sense of my research plan. So I have made a research plan and I know what types of things that I want to be working on at different stages for the next year. So what I did then was I tried to think, okay, in the next 6 months, what kind of publications do I want to have? Do I want to have a conference paper submitted? Ideally, I'd like to have 2 different conference papers or maybe 3, because this is going to be the bigger publishing time for my research. In the summer, there's not really any conference submissions for me, and there is maybe 1 or 2 in the later time of the year, but this sort of period would be the biggest. So I made a list of the upcoming conference submission dates for the next 6 months, and I had to think about what would be the best thing to do. So there are some towards the end of April or May, which would obviously be good to do at the time. And then before that, all of them pretty much are for the end of January. And being that it's the start of January, that is quite a quick turnaround time. So I really had to think about, okay, what could I realistically achieve and actually get a paper out about in that time? And what, again, is going to be furthering my research overall. So what we eventually landed on was doing something in user modeling, because there is a conference called User Modeling, Adaptation and Personalization that has submissions at the end of January. That is not necessarily a realistic target, but it's the kind of work that even if I don't end up getting to publish something, it will be very useful for the other projects that I want to do. So in any case, this is a good thing to be working on right now. Yes, it would be great if I can get something publishable out, but if I don't, it's still going to be important. So the first thing that I did obviously was the sort of time where you're coming up with the idea for the paper, and I tried to link this up with my follicular phase. If you don't know what I mean by this, I'll have the relevant video linked, but essentially I was trying to link this up with a time where I was feeling more creative and more like planning and sort of like ready to learn new things. So during the first week, essentially what I did was I spent a lot of time brainstorming the idea. So I would sit down and there was a long car journey that I was involved with at the time, and I spent pretty much the entire car journey like mapping out potential ideas for this project. Essentially what that means in computer science was, particularly for user modeling, I was making a list of all of the different potential features that I would want to extract from the data that we have. So with the running research that I do, it would be things like the baseline features, and then going into the ones about injury history, like how do we try to model that given that we don't know anything about whether they have actually been injured or not. And then different things like we would need to know the runner's abilities. Again, how do we sort of elicit that information from the data that we have? And that was essentially what I was working on for the first couple of days, and making sort of plans for how I would then actually get this from the data. So once I'd done that, I sort of had to think about, will this be the kind of work that'll be relevant to the conference? So I also did a little bit of research into the conference and the types of previous work that has been there. And I couldn't find anything similar in terms of my specific research, so it means that it would be quite interesting for the conference, I imagine, if they are interested in this type of work, because they wouldn't have had something similar before. But then at the same time, the type of work it is definitely relevant, because there is sort of similar papers in different fields. And I read a couple of papers that had been previously part of the conference and sort of looked at the different format of a short paper versus a long paper, and had to think about what would be necessary to be able to produce a short paper or a long paper for that conference. I also then read some relevant research articles in the exact area that I'm doing, so different things on the user modelling of runners that are from both my research group and essentially my extended research group, so that I would have a familiarity of what other people have done and see what kind of things I would like to do to extend this. And would there be any other ways that I could then evaluate this work that hasn't been done before? So that's just all of the stuff that I was essentially mind mapping and brainstorming for the first week, and sort of really trying to formulate a good understanding of a potential problem that we could work on, and a initial sort of mock-up of what the solution would be like before getting started with the actual programming. So that's essentially what I was doing. And then once I felt I was comfortable enough to be able to explain what I had come up with, I then got in touch with my supervisor, and I sort of said, do you think this would be a realistic target? This is the kind of thing that I would like to do, and I would like it for it to be sort of related to this kind of work. And then he got back to me to say, there's no harm in trying to at least come up with something, and even if we just end up submitting an abstract and not doing a full paper, it's still a good sort of experience. And he sort of had some insight of what would be the best thing to focus on out of what I had said, like something specific to focus on that we hadn't yet done. That obviously is sort of interesting, but also definitely will be useful, because it is something that I want to focus on heavily at some point during the 4 years. So it's a good thing to get started with now at this time when we do have a larger data set than we had before. So that sort of got me on the right track then, that I was ready to get started with the sort of initial work with the data. So what I did was I at least took a subset of the data set, because that's usually how I like to begin any sort of modelling. I don't see the point in working on the actual full data set when it can take a long time to run things on, only to be told that there's something wrong with my code. So usually I'll work on a subset of the data set. So the subset I have is still huge. It's like 2 million activities for like 5,000 different runners. I think it's around that big, unless I'm carrying an extra zero, but I'm pretty sure it is. Essentially, before getting started with working with a huge amount of runners, I'm just going to start off with these 5,000 runners and build at least the feature extraction functions that I will need to do to get the types of features that I want to do. And so now I'm into the more sort of pernickety programming things, which I think I'll be more in the mood for next week, because that will be my luteal phase. There was a number of things that I needed to do. For example, if we're looking at training breaks, essentially we want to look at, what is the distance between the sessions in terms of number of days. And then if we're looking at different lengths of training breaks, like 3, 7, 10 days, and we want to say, when is your next 3-day break? Like this kind of thing that is relatively simple in theory, I always feel like can be a lot harder to implement with the actual data. So that's what I've been working on this week, and I will essentially just be finishing up with that sort of stuff today before getting ready to start doing some of the modelling next week. And that is pretty much it. So that is my update. Essentially, every week now I will be updating you on how the project is going and what kind of things I've gotten done, what's been going well, what's not been going well. And I just think this will be a nice way for you to see sort of a live update of how PhD work can develop. I hope that it will be very useful for you, or at least interesting in some way, even if you're not involved in computer science. Like, I try to talk about things in sort of general terms as much as I can. But I would love, if you are not watching live, that you would comment down below your update for your research. So providing just sort of initial understanding of where your research is at up to right now, or at least the current thing you're working on. Where is that at? That could be something in your writing, it could be something in your reading, but tell us where you're at right now in the comments down below. And each week we'll be able to say that to each other with a little update, and it will hopefully keep us accountable during these crazy times. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for those of you who did show up live. Thanks to all of my wonderful members, and I'll see you all in the next video.